So, good morning. If you are linked up, I want to appreciate you for making out your time to link up with our discussion today. So, our lecture theme today is Maurice Merleau-Ponty. We'll be looking at his phenomenology. Okay, we'll be looking at his phenomenology. We'll discuss his viewpoint on the lived world, the body as my experience. We'll discuss his ideas. We'll try to um, distinguish between his views and that of other credible thinkers that we have done, René Descartes and Jean-Paul Sartre. So, but our major concern is to understand um, Merleau-Ponty's contribution to the discourse on phenomenology. Like I mentioned earlier on, he is a French philosopher born in the year 1908 and he died in 1961. A very close friend of Jean-Paul Sartre. He's a very close friend of Jean-Paul Sartre, even though his perspectives on phenomenology and existentialism differs greatly to that of Jean-Paul Sartre, but they were very close friends and contemporaries. Both of them were very much influenced by René Descartes. It is important to note that even though Merleau-Ponty was influenced by René Descartes, he is one of the most harsh harsh critics of René Descartes. So as we go on, you will see the criticism he leveled at the viewpoint of René Descartes concerning the mind and the body and how the mind influences human knowledge. So apart from Jean-Paul Sartre and René Descartes, other great influences on his philosophies are Gabriel Marcel, Martin Heidegger, and of course Edmund Husserl. So what we are going to do now is we are going to look at the core ideas of his phenomenology. Okay, and be informed that these core ideas are discussed in his most famous book, the book he wrote in 1945, which he titled Phenomenology of Perception. So what are Maurice Merleau-Ponty's core ideas about phenomenology? Now, we usually use the dictum, I am my body, or we are our body, to describe or to summarize his viewpoints on phenomenology. In fact, for him, the body is the lived experience. Okay, so the single biggest difference between Merleau-Ponty and many of these scholars we have done on phenomenology already is the fact that his discourse surrounds how the body is our lived experience, what we are, whether the mind, our thinking, our doing, our actions, our thinking, our fantasizing, our imagining, and everything. For him, they are all the acts and the actions of our body, making everything we do, everything we think, a lived experience that is instantiated by the body. So for him, there is nothing like the mind, there's nothing like the body. Everything, whether the actions of the mind are the actions of the body. So there are three core points you have to take in as we continue. The first one is that what? For Maurice Merleau-Ponty, there is no mind floating above the body, like Descartes made us to believe, or even Sartre made us to believe that there is an absolute ego that transcends the body and that can determine the freedom of the body. So for him, there is nothing like that. There is no mind that is floating or that is existing outside the body, or that is even capable of making you to determine the actions of your body. No, there's nothing like that. Then the second major point there is that what for Maurice Merleau-Ponty, consciousness is not inside us looking out at the world through the windows of the eyes. There's nothing like that. So our consciousness is the consciousness of the body, is an experience of the body. The consciousness is not an act that is buried somewhere inside our body. It is a consciousness that is an action of the body. The consciousness itself is a lived experience. It is not an experience of the mind. It's an experience of a body that is active within space and time. So consciousness is not inside, just like the mind is not floating outside the body. The consciousness is an act of the body. It is the lived experience of the body. It is not something that is inside, operating in the absence of the body or without the actions of the body. So it is an act and an activity of a body that is present and active within space and time. And then the third most important point is that what? We are all embodied beings. So I've told you from the beginning that what? That his phenomenology centers around what? The idea of the lived body, the lived experience. The idea that I am my body. The idea that we are our bodies. So for him, we are embodied beings. My body, your body is not something I have. It is what I am. The body is not a property of our existence. The body for him is the ego. It is what we are. The body is our essence. The body is not just a part of the body. It is our embodiment. It is the instantiation in the instantiation of all our experience. So for him, the body is embodied being. These things, his philosophy, it can be sounding weird, but just try to follow me. I'll try to break it as much as possible. So our body, when he says that the body is embodied being, is a lived experience, he's saying that what? The body is not one part of the dualism Descartes talked about, where the body is separate from the mind. No, the body is an embodied experience. It is not something that I own or that I have. The body is what I am. It is my essence. It is who I am. It is what shapes and controls all my activities. So you can see that at the core of his phenomenological discourse, what does he try to do? He tries to remove that divergence philosophers before him have been making between the body and the mind. In fact, he gives priority over the body. He puts priority on the mind. He prioritized the body. He prioritized the body over the mind. So that the mind becomes an action of the body. So he doesn't even want to hear that tendency to separate this from that. For him, everything is the body. The body is our experience. The body is the ego. The body is not a part of the body. It's not a part of your being. It is the being itself. It is what you are. Okay? All right. So in essence, for Maurice Merleau-Ponty, our perceptions, our thoughts, our freedom, our existence are all rooted in the fact that we are a living body, moving and feeling in the world. You get? So the body is the entire embodiment of our activity, such that even the mind that is consciousness becomes a consciousness of the body itself. So you can see that both our internal perceptions, our outer perceptions, in the language of Franz Brentano, for him becomes a perception of the body. So he marries everything we know about inner outer perception and calls it a lived experience, which is an experience of the body. Okay? So now, since I have measured the core, the central assumptions of his epistemological claims, let us now pick his core ideas one by one and then find a way to break them so that everyone can grasp or understand what it means. So I've already touched on these things, why demystifying his major claims in those 3 points I made earlier on. Now, the first point we are going to look about his core philosophical discourse. Just note that everything we are discussing about Maurice Merleau-Ponty, his idea of I am my body, we are our body, which technically he calls the lived experience, the body as the lived experience. Okay? Now, the first point we are going to look at, for him, the body is the center of our experience. You keep seeing this because that is the core of his phenomenology. The body is at the center of our experience. So that he gave an example. For instance, when you catch a ball, when you catch a ball, Maurice Merleau-Ponty says that what? You don't first calculate the angles before you catch the ball. Okay? You don't first calculate. So the catching of the ball goes at the same time with the consideration of the angle. So that at each time the body acts. The body acts simultaneously with the mind. The mind doesn't first think before the body acts. So the mind, the thinking of the mind, the imagining of the mind, the fantasies of the mind becomes actually the lived experience of the body. They act simultaneously. So that if you want to say which one is even more important, it is actually the body. So the body is at the center of our experience. So what he's saying is that what? When you are experiencing, your body already knows even before your mind is thinking. And when the mind thinks, it thinks because the body is already in activity. Such that the mind cannot be thinking outside the body like Descartes claims and then inform the body of the actions to make. Rather, the body acts at the same time the mind is thinking. So the body is at the center of our experiences. So, in other words, what you need to understand here is that the word directly is the word, we feel and perceive the word through the movement of our body. When we touch, it is our body that touches. When we feel, it's our body that feels. It is not the mind that feels. And at that time we are touching, or even when we are riding the bicycle, it is the body that is actually doing the function of riding. It is not the mind. That's the point he's trying to make. So you can understand why I say that word, that he somehow gives the mind precedence over the body. So he doesn't want that view, that Cartesian tendency to overemphasize the mind over the body to prevail over him, because for him that is not acceptable. Okay, he gave an example, for instance, when you ride a bike, because you have become so used of the technique for riding a bike, you don't have to think. You don't have to think. You just climb the bicycle, put your names or your two limbs, lower limbs on the pedal, and begin to pedal and go. Sometimes you don't even have to look. You already know. Sometimes when you walk, you don't need to even think about the direction of your movement. You just keep moving until you get to where you go. Sometimes when you drive, sometimes because you have mastered the road, you don't even need to look before you negotiate or you change direction. And for him, these examples are the reason why he feels that what? The body has precedence over the mind. Because it is the body that is in touch with space and time, not the mind. So the body actually informs the mind, not the mind informing the body. So that's why he says that what? The body is at the center of our experiencing. Then another important point for him is that perception comes before thought. You can see that this point follows directly from the first one. Perception comes before thought. And you can see here the influence of someone like Brentano that talks about outer perception and inner perception. Remember, Brentano says that there are two types of perception, outer and inner perception. But he says outer perception is what? Is misception. Why inner perception is what? Is the true type of perception that leads us to true knowledge. Because he prioritizes the mind. But for Maurice Merleau-Ponty now, his idea is the reverse. Perception as an experience of the body, outer perception, is more important than inner perception. Okay? It actually comes before thought, which you might consider as inner perception. So, what you see is that what? In classical philosophy, like in the philosophies René Descartes, even Sartre, even somebody like Brentano I've just mentioned, they will tell you that even the empiricists, John Locke and the rest of them, that prioritize perception over rationalism, over innate knowledge, they will tell you that what? We first perceive raw data with our senses, then the mind interprets. For Merleau-Ponty, this is not correct. What Merleau-Ponty suggests when he says perception comes before thought is not the fact that we first perceive before the mind interprets. No. What he's saying is that what? Perception is already meaningful from the start. That as you are perceiving, it already makes meaning. You don't first sense and then sense a kind of information to the mind to process. The point he's making is that what? The actions of the body and the mind are one and inseparable. At the point of perceiving, of sensing, meaning is already given. So it is not about the empiricist view that you first perceive and then the mind now gives meaning to perception. No, for him, at the point of perception already, meaning is given. So there is no a kind of divergence between the perception and meaning given. The perception itself is the act of meaning given. So that's why he says that what? Perception comes before thought, not thought before perception. The thought is the language of perception itself. Okay? So you can see that he even takes the claim of the empiricist to a more extreme position, because the empiricists are ready to say, okay, yes, there is innate knowledge, but empirical knowledge comes first, because we perceive first before we think, and then innate knowledge gives meaning. But this man is saying no, the perception itself is the act of knowing, is the act of meaningfulness. And you can see immediately that what the effort is trying to make here is to do what? To negate that claim or that view or that perspective that what? That the mind and body act separately, because his target has always been to do what? To counter the arguments of René Descartes and of his friend Sartre, who talks about the absolute ego. Okay? So he used example. For instance, he says when you see a red coffee cup, a coffee cups with red patches that has a cylindrical shape, then you conclude that it's a cup. He said that what? You immediately see a cup you can pick up and drink from. So meaning is built into perception because you are a body that drinks a coffee. So as you are seeing the cup, it is red, containing coffee with patches, a cup containing coffee with patches of red around it. At that point, you are seeing the cup, you are touching it, you are feeling it. You don't need to think before you know. At that exact point, when you are seeing the cup, you are feeling it, you are touching it, meaning is already given in that act of perception, in the sensation, in the touching. Meaning is already given. So the body is the center of experiencing, and the experiencing of the body suffices to meaning given already. So the body doesn't have to perceive separately and then wait for the mind to inform it of the meaning of its perception. As the body is perceiving, meaning is given to the body directly via the perceptions of the body. So for him, perception comes before thought. Now, another important point from him is he talks about the pre-reflective level. There's what he called pre-reflective level, and this one follows directly from the last point I made. So for him, most of life happens before we start thinking. That's what he calls about pre-reflective level of human existence. And that is where it is in this pre-reflective level that our body, as our experience, as a lived experience, as an object of perception, or subject of perception rather, it is in this pre-reflective level that the body functions. And that is why he talks about the body as the center of experiencing. So most of our life happens before we start thinking about it. That's what he's saying in his idea of the body existing at the pre-reflective level. So, for instance, you are typing on your phone right now without thinking. You can be typing on your phone A, B, C, D. It is the body acting according to him. You are typing, you may not be thinking. You can press T. The thumb is the body visibly active within space and time that is carrying out those actions. And if the mind is active at that same time, the mind is active because the body is in activity. So the influence of the body, the mind, is not superior to that of the body. It is the body actually leading the mind. So the body for him is capable of deciding, making decisions, of knowing, in spite of the mind. Because the body can function at a pre-reflective level. You can even talk about young kids. You can use them as an example. You cannot reduce them to animals. Sometimes they do things. At that point, you can tell that their level of thinking is not strong enough. It's not mature enough. But using intuition, the language of the body, they make some level of decisions that some adults cannot even make. And that tells you that what? The body is pre-reflective to an extent. And that is the point he's trying to make here. He's saying that what? That our bodies are already engaged with the world in practical, silent understanding, even without the consciousness of the mind. And when the consciousness of the mind, and even when the consciousness of the mind has influence, it is not because the mind is superior to the body. It is because the mind itself is a lived experience of the body. That is the point he's trying to make. And I keep repeating, you can see that the emphasis here is to destroy the Cartesian claim that the mind floats and exists somewhere outside the body. And it is the consciousness of the mind that led to the existence of the body. So you can see him making genuine and painstaking effort to destroy this Cartesian claim. So making the body the center of experience and not the mind. Now, he talks about the reality of ambiguity as a fundamental aspect of human existence. And this one, for him, this ambiguity is part of the lived experience of the body. Okay? And you can bring this idea of ambiguity and compare it to the aspects of to the philosophy of fallenness, or rather of facticity, in the language of Jean-Paul Sartre, and the idea of thrownness in the language of Martin Heidegger. But the difference between these two is that what? When Sartre is talking about facticity, he tried to de-emphasize the idea of ambiguity, claiming that with our freedom we can have pure, we might be able to make the clearest of decisions. Okay, you remember when I was in the class, I was telling you about bad faith and the rest of them. But Maurice Merleau-Ponty is saying that what? That no. That our freedom doesn't mean that we have clarity of purpose, or that we are in control of our destinies and fate. No, he's saying that what? The fact that at some point we are confused in life, we are not sure of what to do, in spite of the existence of our freedom, actually makes us human. It actually makes us active bodily presence in the world. This limitation is a fundamental aspect of our being. That's the point he's trying to make. Freedom doesn't negate ambiguity. He's not saying that we are not free, but he's saying that what, unlike Heidegger and unlike Sartre, yes, we can make choices, but the choices doesn't give us clarity. Our freedom doesn't mean freedom from ambiguity. The human existence itself, because it's a body in space and time, is a lived experience, is shrouded in ambiguity. There is the fear of the unknown. We experience uncertainty. That we have the freedom of choice doesn't mean that we are not uncertain or we don't experience ambiguity. So life is never for him 100% clear or fully under control. No. Sartre said we have radical freedom and total responsibility. Merleau-Ponty says no. We are thrown into a world we didn't choose. He accepts the idea of facticity to that extent. The idea of thrownness in the language of Descartes, he accepts it. We are thrown into a world we didn't choose, with a body we didn't even choose, in situations that are always somewhat unclear. So what he's saying is that what? Freedom exists, but is always limited and shaped by the body, by history, and by other people. Freedom exists, but it doesn't exist absolutely as the lived experience of the body, of the body as a subjective encounter. No, it exists and is limited by history, by the environment the person lives in, and by other people around him. And this history, environment, other people around are what brings about the ambiguity and uncertainty he talks about, because the human person is a lived experience. The body is an active experience that goes on within space-time. So in as much as the body exists, is a relational presence existing in the midst of other entities, other human entities in historicity that is in place and time. So the body is also limited by these factors, because there are some times that even when you have all the knowledge, you don't feel so free to act, because you think about how would these things influence the other persons. And so these are limitations that pose as ambiguity and uncertainty. So that is the point he's trying to make, and you can see how he deviates immediately from the viewpoint of his friend Jean Paul Sartre. So another key point we have to talk about Maurice Merleau-Ponty'S idea of the body as our lived experience, that is selfhood. If you go to many texts, you see different terms. Some scholars call it the body as lived experience, the body as mind, the body as subjective experience. Some call it selfhood. They are the same thing. Some even call it the body as my life world. They are the same thing. Okay, just note that all these things are talking about we are our body, we are our experience. Even the mind is an action, is an activity of the body. So the next point he makes is that that the human person has a lived experience, as a subject existing in the world with an activity called the mind, is that we are intertwined with the world. You can see this idea in Descartes' idea of being in the world. Being and time, being in the world. I told you already that Descartes influenced him. So he embraced that with subtle modifications. So for him, the human person, and you can see where the ambiguity and uncertainty comes in. The human person exists as a being in the world, and his existence is intertwined with the world. So there is no sharp border between me and the world. No. Remember, in phenomenology, on the one we are treating Heidegger, we talked about the life world. He embraced that too. There is no difference between me, myself, as a lived experience, my body. There's no difference between it and the world. So my body and the world are entirely intertwined as a single entity, so that when I or you touch your own hand with your other hand, something strange happens. What's that? You are both the one touching and the one being touched. What does this mean? This reversibility shows that subject and object are not separate. The world is not out there. It is something we live inside. Like fish in water. I'm saying is this. It's very simple. If you are in the world now, for instance, you are seeing the sun. The sun is an object, is an element in the world. You are being in the world. You are always in interaction with the things in the world. As you are interacting with them, they are interacting with you. So just like you touch your hand, you use your right to touch your left. Your left is also touching you. So man is a relational being. So in essence, there is no clear point of divergence or separation between me as a being and the world in which I live in. My body and the world are completely intertwined. I see the sun feels me, I feel it. There is an ongoing dialectics and intercourse between myself and every element in the world. And that's why today we'll talk about climate change. Everything we do in the world comes back to us. So you can see subtly how he brings in the idea of being in the world being in the world in Heidegger and the idea of life world, first person perspective from Edmund Husserl, and marry it together to create his own idea of the body as intertwined with the world. The point he's trying to make is that what? Our bodies are not separated from the world. The body finds itself, because the body is an activity in the world. The body shapes the world, and the world shapes the body. So the two are not separable. At every moment, we act, we imagine, we fantasize, we do anything. We are doing it as beings in the world, and we are actively impacting on the world, and the world is also actively impacting on us, because the world is a living essence. That's the point he's saying. So that there's a relation of consequence between what we do, how we live, and the space and time we do and live in. So our being, our body, is entirely intertwined, connected with the world we live in. That's the point he's making. So the last core principle or idea we have to reflect on Maurice Merleau-Ponty is the idea of the fact that other people are part of my world from the beginning. His idea of other people. Remember when I was talking about ambiguity, I told you that he also acknowledges the value of Descartes' concept of historicity. Okay, those of you are doing Descartes in the class these days, so you should understand that. He acknowledges the fact that we live within space-time, and within space-time we have other relational beings, other humans we experience within the world. So he acknowledges the existence of other people in the world as part of my own world as a body, your own world as a body. So unlike Sartre, who does not really acknowledge, I've made this point initially, who does not really acknowledge what impact or consequences other people might have on your free choices. Merleau-Ponty acknowledges this. You know, for Descartes and some other existentialists, they tell you that they promote subjectivism, and in fact, the need for the human person to act without the influence of the crowd. And for them, in fact, authentic existence is the ability to act as a subject, as a distinct subject, devoid of undue influences from the crowd. So when you act, acknowledging the impact the others might have on you, to a large extent, existentialists like Kierkegaard, even Sartre, would say that what? You are living inauthentic existence. So, but for Maurice Merleau-Ponty, he acknowledges the impact and the presence of other people in your body, on your body as a being in the world. He acknowledges them. So he says that what? We grow up inside the world already full with other people. There's never anyone that lives as an island. So a baby learns to smile because he or she sees other people smiling. Your body learns how to be human by imitating and responding to other people. So what it means is that what? We are intercorporeal. That's the stem. We are intercorporeal. We are interbodies. We are intersubjects. Just like he says that what? That the body is inseparable from the world it lives in. It experiences. That is how too the body, you, me, is inseparable from the other people you relate with. Because you impact on them, they impact on you. Even when you try to live as a being that doesn't want to be influenced, to close your essence, to cut off yourself from relating, subtly you are always being influenced by the people around you. So there is no way you can separate your body as a lived experience from the experiencing and the presence of other bodies. That's the point he's trying to make. And that's why he says that what? Our body as lived experience are intercorporeal. You know what it means? Intercorporeal. So we are relational beings. We are relational purposes, relational subjects. So our destinies, our fates, our purposes intercross with other people around us. So we cannot say we can act completely outside or without the influence of other people around us. That's the point he's trying to make, because the human person is intercorporeal. Our bodies are in dialogue even before words. Our bodies are in dialogue even before we act, because most times before you even decide to move, the action of the body along with the mind, you have already imagined. If you want to, for instance, that if you want to go to the market to do something, it is you decide, the body decides to go to the market because there are other bodies in the market it is going to encounter. That's the point he's trying to make, because we are intercorporeal. If you decide to leave your house to go downstairs, maybe to draw water, it is because you know that when you go there, the person that is in charge of making the water available has done his work. So you are, even when you interact with the water, you are interacting with somebody whose function is to provide the water. So, and this means that what? Freedom can sometimes be what? Be ambiguous, be uncertain, because we commingle, we correlate, and even interrelate with other persons in the world. So that for him, our bodies are lived experience is inseparable with the world it inhabits. Our body inhabits, and then is also inseparable with what? With other peoples in the world. Now, there are two important differences we have to make going forward. This is just the core of Sartre's phenomenology. Is the core. The body has lived experience, and the body has lived experience is his concept of selfhood. The body has lived experience, in summary, means what? We are our experiences. We are experiences. It's the summary, it's the core. If you have any confusion about this, comment in the comment section of this live stream. I'm going to reply and explain and make sure I simplify it. Now, but we have to be able to look at, we have to know the implications of this body as lived experience, his idea of the lived body, his idea of selfhood. We have to be able to know the implications of this, phenomenological implication, ethical implication, and even cultural and existential implications. We have to. Now, the next thing we have to consider is, I've talked about two major great influences on Maurice Merleau-Ponty, his friend Jean Paul, and René Descartes. So we are going to look at how his ideas relate with that of Merleau-Ponty and that of René Descartes. So relate with that of Jean Paul and that of René Descartes. So we'll begin with the one that is more important. So we are going to look at how Jean Paul Sartre's phenomenology, existential phenomenology, relates and differ more importantly from that of Maurice Merleau-Ponty. They are close friends, but they have different views. So that is a lesson for us to learn. Now, we'll begin from Sartre's existence precedes essence. That is Sartre's famous dictum, upon which he built the entire corpus of his philosophical logic. Now, Sartre says that what? Essence precedes existence. We first be before we come. Sartre says this because he wants to acknowledge the absolutism of what? Of our freedom. Ponty agrees. He says, all right, yes, to some extent, yes, existence precedes essence. But he insisted that what? Essence is actually shaped by the body. Now, Sartre tries to understand existence as the body, and if you like, essence as the mind. Sorry, Maurice Merleau-Ponty tried, when Sartre says existence precedes essence, for him, he interpreted Sartre to be saying that what? That the body exists before the mind. Okay? The body exists before the mind. Yes, but he knows that what Sartre is trying to do is to teach that our freedom is absolute. Now, Even though Maurice Merleau-Ponty is sure that Sartre's essence, idea of essence, precedes existence, provides a very sure and solid foundation for his viewpoint that what the body, which is existence, even has priority over essence. You get my point from that perspective. But because he also knows the philosophical and existential consequence that if that is accepted and swallowed hook, like and sinker, it also means that what freedom is absolute. So he says yes, Sartre is correct to an extent. To some extent, he's correct that existence precedes essence. But yet he insists that what essence is what is also shaped by the body. You know, so that the point he's trying to make here is that so that freedom doesn't become absolute. There's no excuse to accept the fact that what there is absolute freedom, because here when he says that essence is shaped by the body, he's talking about my body and the body of others in the world that I encounter as a historical being. So that for him, the body is not just my body, it is the body of my body as a subject, and the body of others in the world. So I don't shape my existence entirely because I am. I shape my existence in consideration with other relational beings in the world, so that my freedom is not entirely in my control. Yes, essence precedes existence, but essence is also shaped by the body. That is what Maurice Merleau-Ponty says here. The body here, it is not the subjective lived experience alone. It is the body in correspondence, in correlation as what with what other bodies in the world. Remember, it talks about intercorporeality of the human body. All right. Now, the next point of differentiation and similarity to take note of is that Sartre preaches radical and absolute freedom. Right? Sartre preaches radical and absolute freedom. I've already made this point clear already. But Maurice Merleau-Ponty accepts the reality of freedom, but insists it is always situated in the body and the world. So that for him, freedom is not absolute. It's not even radical. Freedom is responsible, is reasonable, is limited, and the reason for the limitation of the freedom is that what? Freedom is intercorporeal. It is correlational. It is freedom that is dialogical, because freedom is always freedom in relation to and with. I hope you understand me. Then the next point is that for Sartre, consciousness is separate from the world. Remember, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. But for Maurice Merleau-Ponty, consciousness is bodily. Consciousness is an activity of the body. And as an activity of the body, it is immersed in the world. There is no consciousness without the world. Even the fantasies, the whatever you want to call it, imaginings, all of them are actions that are particular and related to the world. So there is no consciousness outside the world or separate from the body, because the body is an activity. The mind is an activity of the body. So consciousness is a bodily activity immersed in the world. So there is no consciousness outside the body or outside the world. Every consciousness is consciousness of the body. Every consciousness is an activity of the body as a subject immersed in the world. Then Sartre, another important point is that Sartre views other people as a threat to freedom. And that is why he says that your freedom is absolute, do whatever you like. But for Maurice Merleau-Ponty, other people co-create the meaning of the world. You understand me? They co-create because the person, the individual, the body is intercorporeal. So other people co-create the meaning of the world with me as a lived experience, meaning that other people actually shape a person's freedom. They are not a threat to the freedom, my freedom. They rather help in shaping it. Okay? So finally, So whereas Sartre spoke loudly about angst, nausea. If you read Being and Nothingness, you see these key terms: angst, nausea, and the rest of them, and the need for absolute responsibility based on absolute freedom. So Ponty emphasized ambiguity, wonder, and shared human condition, meaning that freedom is relational, not absolute. You see, all these points are actually circular or cyclical, keep repeating themselves. So Sartre spoke about angst, angst, and nausea. In fact, I think he has a work or an article that he called nausea. So, and the need for absolute freedom as a way of dealing with this angst and nausea. But for Sartre, those things are, but they are not very relevant. The more important thing is the act of wonder as an activity of the body, then the fact of the lived body as a shared human condition, and then the fact that meaning is relational, not absolute. So he gave so many practical examples to clarify this point. He gave so many practical examples to clarify this point. I said this class is going to be 1 hour, and I want to stick to that. He gave so many practical examples to clarify this point. The example of the phantom limb, the blind man's cane, and even a phantom figure he called Snyder, his phantom damaged patient. But no need to make those elucidations, because I believe you already understood the point I made there. So let's look at our final analysis. Maurice Merleau-Ponty'S detailed critique of René Descartes, because is actually his takeoff point. He began his discourse on phenomenology and existentialism by first taking a very big swipe at René Descartes, dismantling his idea of mind and body, the dualism, and it is from there that he began his own philosophical discourse. So Merleau-Ponty devotes dozens of the pages of his book, Phenomenology of Perception, to dismantling Descartes' philosophy, especially the famous cogito, I think, therefore I am. He dismantled it. He was very, very radical in criticizing Descartes and dualism. So what we are going to do now, we are going to present a step-by-step critique. In fact, just know that the central point he's trying to make is that what? Descartes committed an unpardonable fallacy by insisting that what? That cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. He says is an unpardonable intellectual offense for Descartes to have concluded that the mind is a competent consciousness able of existing somewhere, floating somewhere outside the body, and such floatable consciousnness is the reason why the body then exists. That is the crux of his critique of Descartes. So we are going to split this into bits. Sometimes when you try to split this thing, it becomes technical. So we are going to split it into bits and see how he dismantled Descartes and the foundation of Cartesian rationalism. So the cogito does not reveal a pure thinking substance. That is what Maurice Merleau-Ponty says. Descartes claims that even if everything external is an illusion, the act of doubting proves there is a thinking I. Because that's what Descartes tried. Because at the point at the beginning he was trying he wanted to create a certain foundation for he wanted to create a foundation rather for certain and precise knowledge, right? And then he decided to doubt everything. In the act of doubting, he now discovered that he is a being, that the body is existing somewhere. So the act of doubting proves there is a thinking I. That is what Descartes says. Merleau-Ponty replies, he says no, that when I am actually doubting, I do not encounter a pure embodied mind. I've already explained this thing, that when you are doubting, the mind is not a pure existence existing already. that in the act of doubting itself, you feel your body tense, you feel the breath, your pulse, the pulse of your heart, and then you even feel your mind, your eye, you perceive your eye, you feel your eye sensing into space. So that the doubting itself is an activity of the body. You get? So the doubting itself is an activity of the body. So the act of thinking is already soaked in bodily experience. So that thinking is ontologically a function of an active body. So in essence, there is no thinking thing separate from the lived body. So you can see why all through our discourse of Merleau-Ponty, we kept emphasizing on the body as a lived experience, because he doesn't want to hear that idea of the mind as a thinking thing. He doesn't want to hear it, because that thinking thing is actually a functionality, is actually a proof of the functionality of the body as an activity within space-time. So the next idea he tackled, or his next reaction or critique against Descartes is the fact that Descartes treats the body like an external object. Okay, like an object, like stone, or like a plant that is just there. So in the second meditation, you see Descartes looks at his body from the outside, as if it were just a machine. So the body is just like a machine that whenever the mind is ready, the mind can now go and pick the body and wear it. So he reduced the body to a mere incorporeal existence, a mere object that is just there, that can only be given life and existence by the mind. So Merleau-Ponty says no, he rejected that. He suggests that this is only possible because Descartes is using an artificial reflective attitude. That is falsehood. So that in actual life, my body is not an object among objects. It is the invisible background. It is the matrix, the horizon that lets me have a point of view. You can see the subtle influence of what's his name again? Of Edmund Husserl. Okay, my body as my life world. Okay, so in essence, Merleau-Ponty claims that that we as lived bodies, we should not see my body as a table. We cannot see our body as a table or as any other ordinary object in the world. That the body is always here, is always active, is always present. Okay, in the world, once the body is in the world, it is always an activity. There's never a time, even when we're asleep, the body is always active. And that is why when you breathe, the body keeps, the pulse, you can feel the pulse of the body. So the body is not just any object out there that has no life, that has no existence. The body is actually the matrix, the horizon. It is the totality of our subjective experience. The body is experiencing itself, right? Not the object. So that is another. Then there's what he called the pigs of Marx. What he used the pigs of Marx example. Because they can't use these pigs of wax to further explain the idea that the mind and the body are separate, right? So he dismantled it, saying that logic doesn't work. So Descartes takes a piece of wax in the second meditation. So as the piece of wax melts, all sensible qualities change. When candle wax is melting, you can see that it will be changing from solid to liquid, right? So now Descartes says that that even though the wax is melting, the wax is melting, we still know it is the same wax through intellectual judgment. See again the emphasis on the mind. That when you hold the candle wax, for instance, that it is melting, what makes you to know that it is melting and is changing? It's not even your body. It is your intellectual judgment, the mind. So that even at that time, the mind is an activity outside the body. So Merleau-Ponty says no, he counters that. He attacked it. He said no, that's not true. So for him, When actually you are holding the wax, you perceive its identity through or by moving your finger. You feel it. So the way it yields its temperature, its thickness or stickiness, all those are bodily perceptions. They are bodily experience, not abstract judgment. So what he's saying is that what? That why Descartes says that when a wax is melting, it is the judgment of the mind that helps us to know that it is melting. Because of his emphasis on the mind over the body. I think, therefore I am. Maurice Merleau-Ponty is saying it's not true. It's not true. That what makes us to feel that wax and to know that it is melting is the fact that we can feel the body of the candle, for instance. We can even touch the molten lava, the molten liquid and its stickiness. We can feel it. So it is this perception of the body that actually makes us to know that something, a metamorphosis is happening within the candle. You can see the struggle between these two intellectual giants. Quite interesting. So that the struggle becomes, what is prior? Is it the mind or the body? Okay, so knowledge of the piece of wax that is melting is not known because of intellectual judgment, the activity of the mind, as Descartes suggested. It is rather known because of the perception and sensing of the body, by feeling the candle, by feeling the stickiness of the liquid, and then by seeing actually that the wax is dissolving. Okay, his final reaction against René Descartes, the same thing, the mind-body problem, right? So for him, that mind-body problem only arises because of Descartes' false starting point. Okay, we cannot overemphasize this, that today this mind-body problem, now called interactionism in mind and body scholarship, it exists because Descartes actually started from a wrong foundation. So once you split the mind and the body into two substances, what do you face? You face the impossible question, how do they interact? That's what he's saying. So the famous problem that has tortured philosophy for centuries therefore arises. So because eventually what Descartes says is that there are two substances. There's the body, there is the mind, two separate substances. And the problem became, how do they interact? Becomes, how do they interact? So Merleau-Ponty says the problem is a pseudo problem. It shouldn't have existed in the first instance because there are no two substances. There is only one reality, the lived body. You see, he's going back. So there are no two substances. The body is within, the mind is within the body. In fact, the mind is an activity of the body. So there are no two substances. So the lived body is both the subject I perceive and the object, others that can be seen. So in essence, he negated and refuted or even rejected Descartes' dualism, the existence of two substances, mind and body, and says what? There is only one, and that one is the lived body, the selfhood. So that will be it. So in essence, the summary is that what? Descartes thinks that truth is achieved when the mind is completely detached and sees clear and distinct ideas. Merleau-Ponty says no. All truth, even mathematical truth, is achieved by a bodily being who draws diagrams, writes symbols, speaks, gestures, and lives in a shared subjective world. There is no truth for disembodied angels. That's what he's trying to show. So you can only know the truth when you are a historical being, when you are a bodied experience, an embodied experience. Because for him, truth, knowledge, facts are historical. So the mind as an activity of the body, not as an activity outside the body, comes to grasp these things. So the truth, knowledge, and all these things are not functions of the mind as an activity outside the body. They are functions of the mind as a lived experience of the body. So the bottom line is, Merleau-Ponty does not just reject Descartes. No. He shows that the entire Cartesian framework is a brilliant intellectual construction that floats above the lived reality. Okay? So it's logical, it's interesting to listen, but there is no logic, there is no foundation. So once we return to the phenomenal field, The world as it is actually given to perceiving, to moving, to touching. He's saying that what? Descartes' problem evaporates. So the problem Descartes created does actually is artificial. It doesn't exist. Because once you come to the real world and the experience within space-time, you can see that all those Cartesian paradoxes, the puzzles, they evaporate. They don't exist. So the summary of what we have discussed today is that what? Maurice Merleau-Ponty'S big message is, we do not have bodies. No, he's not saying that we have bodies. Maurice Merleau-Ponty is saying that what? We are our bodies. For instance, now I am my body. I don't have body as a property or as a subject. No, we are. Our body is us. We are our body. You are your body. Your body is not one of the properties of your existence. Your existence itself, your essence is your body. And because we are living, moving, perceiving bodies, the world is never out there as an object. It is the home we constantly inhabit and co-create with others. So you can see that what Husserl calls the life world is what he's calling the body, the lived experience. Okay, so that his philosophy, his phenomenology, his existential phenomenology is an existentialism of the flesh. Is an existentialism, is a phenomenology of perception. Is a phenomenology of touch, of habit, of ambiguity, and one that is intertwined with the lives of the people, other people in the world, and with the world itself as a historical stage for existence. So that you can see that this man makes phenomenology more personal, more subjective, more tangible, more concrete. He brings what Brentano, Heidegger, Sartre makes very, very abstract and makes it concrete. So phenomenology, existence for him is the lived body. It's not an abstract ego or a transcendental ego or inner perception or some kind of abstract concept. It is the body as my experience, as your experience, so that what matters for him is our selfhood. But this selfhood is not absolutely determined by us. It is also influenced by what? The world we live in and other bodies as lived experiences in the world. And that is why it says that what? Freedom is not absolute. So, gentlemen, thank you for your presence in this online class. I will leave it here. If you have questions, you can shoot in the comment section. I will be there to respond. So from time to time, we'll be having this kind of sections to save stress for you and for I. So that is it. So I'll be ending the stream right now so that you can have your free time. Feel free to react in the comment section. I'll be there to respond. Remember, I've told you, you must be able to know the implications, phenomenological implications, ethical implications, cultural and existential implications of Maurice Merleau-Ponty'S idea of the body as lived experience, as a selfhood. You must be able to know the implications of this in the contemporary world. How does this impact? How does this, affect life in the modern world? So until we see, cheers, have a great day. React, I'll be in the comment section replying your questions. All right, see you.